I'm Leanne Tran, psychologist who's worked with families whose kids don't fit the mould for almost 20 years. I've worked with children for decades, but I know parents are the real change makers when it comes to their kids. Having 3 kids of my own means I know it's not easy. Parent Like a Psychologist is all about simplifying how you support your kids with psychology information filtered through years of experience to take you from overwhelmed to confident. Come on in. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Parent Like a Psychologist. I'm really excited to be with you today for this book review podcast. Reading is one of my favorite things to do, and you can see that behind me if you're watching on YouTube. Got lots of books there. And I read personally for, novels and that kind of thing, but also a lot of books as well about parenting, about personal development, and about children, and lots of different things. So um, I feel like when I do a book review on the podcast here for parents, it's a sweet spot of all of my interests. It's about reading, it's about parenting, it's about kids, and it's about connecting with people and sharing knowledge as well. And so today I'm talking about The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt. I referenced this in a previous podcast as well. I think the Smart Parents Guide to Screens, and thought actually it's worth delving a little bit deeper into this book for an episode of its own. I finished reading it a little bit ago. It's the kind of book that really does get you thinking, but I've got to say it had me panicking as well, to the point where, so what it's about, I guess I'll go over it in a minute, but a quick overview is that it's a bold book that's with a clear argument that phones and social media are reshaping childhood and not for the better. Um, and that really got me having this really extreme reaction quickly. And now that I've had a little bit of time to sit with it, I feel like I can see it in a bit more of a clear way. But because of this talk about smartphones and social media, but also gaming as well, being this constant threat that's undermining childhood, it had me saying to my kids, that's it, we're all getting dumb phones. We're not going to use smartphones anymore. We're going right back to the old Nokia where all you can do is play Snake. Um, if you're on the bus on the way home, and you can call and text, and that's about it. And I remember seeing my teenager had this look of fear in his eyes. And at the time I thought, you look afraid. That means that, this is right, because you're afraid. It's showing that you're addicted and we've got to get rid of this. But I feel like I've calmed down a little bit now. So today I want to walk you through the key ideas, share what I found helpful, what raised some questions for me, the holes maybe that in the book for neurodivergent kids, and then how it, how this can connect to raising neurodivergent kids. And so the core message of the book is that it talks about, it's got a lot of research in the book as well. The section at the end that just has the references is like 20 pages long or something. So that it's really research heavy, but not in a way when you read it. So it's really easy to read as a parent. But what the book takes us through is this idea that around 2010 childhood changed, and coincidentally that was the year my son was born, that looked at me with pure panic when I told him I was going to get him a dumb phone. But anyway, so around 2010 is when childhood changed, and kids shifted from play-based outdoor activities and real social childhood to doing things more indoor, phone based, and having a screen dominant childhood. And of course, you can see that is statistics tell us things, but they present it in extremes. So that obviously is not true for every child, and there's a whole lot of variation in how kids do things. But this is the idea in the book. And around the same time, rates of things like anxiety, depression, and self harm rose sharply, especially in girls. The author, Jonathan Haidt, links this to the rise of social media, especially platforms like Instagram and TikTok, also declines in sleep, attention, and real life social skills, which he attributes to screens as well, and reduced independence and unstructured play. So the idea from the book, or the questions it asks, is what happens when you remove risk, independence, and real world connection from childhood? You don't just get safety, you get anxiety. And so the prominent idea in the book, too, is that it's not just phone use that. And with phone use, I guess. So hang on, let me take you a step back. So the problem with phones is that then the internet is portable, basically, and that people can be and are connected at all times. So that's really different to back when, before 2010, maybe kids still used phones, but they were more the ones that where you could just message or call people. They still used the internet, but it was typically related, or sorry, linked to a computer at home, and it wasn't constantly available. And the book talks about how it's that constant availability of the internet now, which is one thing. It makes the prominence of social media a lot higher. It makes the prominence of gaming a lot higher. But the book really talks about how it's twofold, because while all of that is so much more a part of our children's lives, the other part is that about what they miss out on. And what they're missing out on is one-on-one or small group interactions with people in real life that are they have a different quality to just posting on Instagram. And kids are not doing as much outdoor stuff, play-based stuff with independence and risk. And Haight kind of puts those two things together. So it's the fact that we've had the rise of the phones that's a challenge, but also it means that kids are missing out on other things, and it's that double effect that's causing a lot of challenges for um, children and adolescents. So I think I wanted to talk about firstly what I think he gets right, and then where I pause or disagree or think that it's a little bit more complicated. Uh, what I think he gets right is that he really identifies and names how so many parents feel that something about phones and social media isn't working, that there's this real disconnect between the benefits that it can bring and then the risks to our kids as well: anxiety, depression, screen addiction, and that kind of thing. I think, too, what is another valid point is that play is essential. And we know that as, psychologists, and there's lots of research out there about how play is the primary occupation of a child, which means it's their job to do that, and that's how they learn. Kids learn to assess risk through play. They learn to problem solve through play, and they learn social skills through interacting with other kids, and in a way that's not always monitored by us as parents. Um, so it's really important developmentally that kids have unstructured play. The problem with phones and games is that it's very structured. So if you think about um, yeah, I guess Minecraft's probably a good example of one that might have some creativity, but other things, it's designed to be done a certain way, so there's not that creativity and problem solving and all of that kind of stuff. The other thing I think he gets right is the science around sleep and blue light as well. which is something I've talked about earlier in the year on the podcast. So blue light, so this lines up with what we know that, um, yeah, it fits in with our cycles of waking, and blue light from the sun, should be something we experience from being outside, and but not at night. So that's when the sun starts to go down, it gets darker, and we naturally start to produce melatonin, the sleep hormone. What we know is that screen exposure does affect sleep and self-regulation, and so those things I think are clear as well. There is a clear call to action as well in the book, which I think is valid. There is, partly what, Haidt talks about is that there is no real consensus at the moment about when, as parents, we should start doing these things. Lots of the research in the book was from, America, so I don't know exactly how that compares to Australian research here. But certainly we don't have such a, yeah, there's no clear consensus on at what age kids should get a phone and at what age they should get social media. And so Haidt talks about delaying, smartphones and the use of it, and trying to develop a bit of a community standard about what that should be. I know in Australia recently the government's made moves to do that, but I think it's just that, that one move without it being a societal or community kind of approach to it is not quite going to work. Um, and he also calls for removing phones from school, which I think is a great thing, and trying to build in real life connection as well. The researcher there on how many notifications kids get a day on average is just astounding. And I went into um, I've got two, well, yeah, I'll talk about teenagers because I've got two teenagers and can go in and have a look at how much screen time they use on average per day, which I think, I mean, it was too high. I looked at it and thought, okay, wow, I'm going to take back the house here. But what was interesting too was the average number of notifications that children get. And the notifications, in my kids, it was really high, and they do have it on silent, but it's still a notification, and the problem with notifications is that it, is a call to go back to the phone. So it's something that's drawing you back into the phone. So those clear call to actions throughout the book were really helpful, I think, in terms of laying out the science for us about, for example, with the notifications, talking about the research about on average how many notifications kids get per day. It talks about how that's designed to pull us back toward the phone, and that interrupts our attention that we're putting on other things. It interrupts social interactions and all of that kind of stuff. And then it gives some clear, um, action steps for parents to be able to take. So you can have a look at what your child's phone use is like and the notifications, and take some practical steps on how to, rectify that. So I think, I've talked about things like sleep hygiene and that kind of thing, and do that in the programs I, complete with parents. And talk about screens and how to manage them as well. So if it's so that lets me know it's a really common issue for parents. Um, Read the book and see what you think. I'd love to have a conversation with you about it if you're called to do so. I think particularly what's missing from the book, I'll get into a little bit more, but we know for ADHD brains as well that, things like novelty and excitement and new things are really attractive to the ADHD brain. So that's why in my programs we talk about how to manage screen boundaries and setting structure and all of that kind of thing, because it's a challenge that might be harder for parents of ADHDers than for parents of typical kids to manage. So why do it alone? Let's do it together. The parts where I kind of take a pause or disagree with some of the content in the book is that just because things happen at the same time, which we call correlation, doesn't mean the same thing as causation. So just because two things happen around the same time doesn't mean that one has caused the other. So I think while there is mental health increase in or mental health increase in mental health challenges for kids, I don't know that we can say it's 100% because of screen time and lack of play. I think there's other things like stress, schooling pressure, uh, economic times as well, but also things like the climate environment has impact on kids, and that lots more kids now have some anxiety and kind of life questions because of climate change. They're not sure what their future looks like. So I think I don't think it's as simple as it just being phones. The The other thing is that it feels a little bit like I said, my reaction was a bit panicky. I think it has good intentions, and like anything where, a researcher has like, it's clear information, and there definitely is a phone problem in our, society now. He's brought a lot of passion to the book there, but it might end up uh, making parents feel like they've failed a bit. But if that's you, and don't worry, because I felt the same thing, and um, yeah, maybe it went too far in that direction. But what was good about it is it made me really kind of stop and take stock of what our family's tech use was up to at the moment. I'd rather help parents feel empowered than alarmed. I think if we all get anxious about the anxious generation, that's not going to help. So trying to take it with a bit more balance would be helpful. And then the last bit I thought is that, it's not all kids are the same. So for neurodivergent kids, I think it's a different story. For autistic kids and ADHDers, screens are not, they can still be the enemy, and lots of parents have struggles with their kids using screen time, but they can also be a really solid way to socially connect, and a bit of a lifeline in that way. So, for lots of neurodivergent kids, online friendships might feel safer, particularly for those who struggle with face to face interactions and anxiety. And visual or game based media can help kids with things like learning, motivation, regulation as well. And so that's where the nuance comes in, that it's important to think about things in terms of the strengths and the difficulties. And for your child, as you weigh it up, it's going to be different to how another family might weigh it up. Um, yeah, so if you haven't already, go back and listen to the episode about the Smart Parents Guide to Screens, because that's all about thinking about how you can create um, screen use in your family that focuses on quality content and interactions. And I think that's the difference. It's not just cutting it out altogether. It's a lot more about thinking about how we can do it better. One thing that Haidt mentions that I had talked about in that episode, but is how the problem with things like Instagram and TikTok is that it's not really a genuine connection. And so if you post something on Instagram, it goes out into the void, really, versus when you are having a one on one conversation with somebody, whether that's texting or on Skype or, oh, does anyone use Skype anymore? Zoom, FaceTime. The quality of that interaction is really different. You still can have interactions on platforms like Instagram and TikTok with people one on one, but it's not automatic. The default kind of is that engagement with a community or system that's not really one on one. So go back to that episode to hear about how you can try and encourage more one on one or quality interactions for your neurodivergent kids online. The last part I wanted to talk about is just a bit about what you can do. So these are things that I learned about from the book and that resonated with me. The first thing is to create screen boundaries that are collaborative, not controlling. And so for me, that was not new because I know that collaborating with your kids rather than just setting down the boundaries that they have to comply with is the better way to go. But he does a good job of explaining that in the book. The other thing is to think about really trying to support better sleep by making um, bedtime tech free. And that is a recent change that we have put in place in our house for the parents because the kids were already doing it, but my husband and I were not. So that is something that we've put in place for ourselves. The idea too to reintroduce real world play and connection, or to make sure that your kids are getting that online. So if they're spending time online with friends after school, just try and make sure that it's one on one or it's in a small little group. So the quality of that genuine connection with another person is preserved. Another idea he talks about is the focus on digital nutrition rather than digital restriction, because it's really we can't have it just be about cutting down the phone use because that's just not. It has to be more than that. It because that's really difficult to do when technology is just such a big part of our lives these days. But it doesn't help neurodivergent kids who potentially want to connect with other people in that way. So it's a lot more about nutrition. So thinking about um, what type is good for us, what type is not good for us, and trying to do what's good and not do what's bad for us. And then the last bit is to model the habits that you want to see, especially with phone use. And so I know that because I talk to parents all the time about how what we do models to our kids what they should do. But this really brings it home, I think, why it's so important to do that. We all want to just, unwind and chill out or like vegetate at the end of the day sometimes, but we've got to be really mindful of what our habits are teaching our kids. Um, yeah, so I'm still trying to wind myself back from the panic of that one personally. As somebody too, I love to read and I read on my Kindle a lot, which is one of my kids has stolen my Kindle for themselves, so I read on my phone. And I'm really aware that when I'm doing that, my kids just see me looking at a phone. They don't know what I'm doing. They don't know that I'm just doing one thing, which is a deep mindful activity of reading a book. They just see me looking at my phone, and it makes them think about their phone as well. Um, yeah, I went to a retreat a little while ago. This is an off-topic thing, but at the retreat, they have a no phone policy, and they were citing some research that shows that when some people, because of this phone addiction and the stress that it can bring us and anxiety about being connected and meeting our obligations, that just the sight of a phone can increase people's stress levels and cortisol levels. um, and it immediately makes us think about what we have to do on our phones. And so being really aware, I've talked in my podcast about doing screen time boundaries, about how that might involve sometimes when it's no phone time, so it's phone free time, everyone has it away, and it's just certain hours of the day when it's used, and these are some of the reasons why. So there's lots of really, really good information in the book. If you're someone who finds it hard to read nonfiction books, the audiobook is a great option as well. I listen to the audiobook and um, I guess because, yeah, I don't know why I have both. It's a bad habit that readers have. It's called a shelf trophy because if I don't have it, I can't put it on my shelf to show that I've read it. But yeah, it's really easy to access for parents. It's lots of good quality information and research, but you don't have to be a scientist to get it. So my final thoughts, I guess, is that the book is really important, but like every parenting book, it's not the whole story. It's a great way to start a conversation with your um, spouse or co-parent and with your children, and to really even with yourself to think about what you want the lives of your family to be like in terms of screens. So as part of that, what does a healthy digital life look like for your child, and what would help you feel more confident supporting them in that? If screen battles, and sleep struggles, emotional overwhelm, and maybe partly anxiety, a part of your everyday, then that might be a great time to connect with somebody. And I would love to be that person who can guide you through and support you in my Chaos to Calm program, or even the ADHD programs that I have that can help with primary schoolers and teenagers. Um, yeah, so in the end, a really great book to read, but if you read it and panic, just give yourself a minute and know that it's not, we don't have to panic. It's not the full story, and that for your neurodivergent kids, the solutions might be a little bit more nuanced than talked about in the book. Um, yes, but thanks again for joining me, and I will move off this screen topic now. I think I've talked about it enough, and I'm starting to feel like I'm, um, you know, harping on about it too much. But there's a lot of good resources in the last couple of episodes now for you to go back to and look at if screens is a challenge for you and your family. If not, join next time and let's uncover some other difficulties, and I'm so excited to be able to guide you through them together. Thanks again for listening. Thanks for listening to this episode of Parent Like a Psychologist. If you found it helpful, please share on Instagram so other parents can benefit too, and tag me at Leanne Psychology so that I can say a big thank you. Head over to leannetran.com.au to join the village for bite-sized psychology tips straight to your inbox. I really hope this podcast has brought a new perspective and you a step closer towards a calm parent and a thriving child. Have a delightful day.